Welcome to day 4 of my Maternal Mental Health Week special. 4 days in, and I'm only now getting around to talking about nutrition and food. It just goes to show how it has really become such a small part of the picture when it comes to motherhood well-being. I think it's very important, and I will always start with food with my clients, but it's only a small part of the jigsaw puzzle. So one of the factors that I think affects mental health in motherhood and why we end up losing our sense of self is feeling so exhausted all the time. And I think there are 3 main reasons for this exhaustion. Number 1, mental fatigue, that well-known mother load. Number 2, broken sleep, the simple fact of not getting enough sleep in enough blocks of time for the first time in your life. And then number 3, having a tired diet. Where you choose quick bursts of energy from food that in the long term make us feel depleted, depending on caffeine and sugar. So in this episode, I'm going into the factors that lead us to have such a poor diet and what you can do about it. This is what I spend a lot of my time doing with clients one-to-one. So let's jump in. So we often go into pregnancy with quite low nutrition, especially if you were on the birth control pill or any other birth control for a long time before this, because these cause a lot of nutrient depletion for a whole range of vitamins, notably B vitamins that are really key for energy metabolism. And then pregnancy and childbirth themselves takes up a lot of nutrients because baby is prioritized at the expense of mum. Nutrients are taken from mum's stores, so bones for calcium, your brain for omega-3 fats. And then after we've given birth, we might go into breastfeeding, which increases demands for a lot of nutrients. Then we have the sheer effort of keeping another human being alive, the stress when things aren't going well, when there's a lot of expectations placed on ourselves, when we get the external pressures from family and healthcare professionals. And then, of course, there's the lack of sleep. And all of these things put our body into a state of stress. And when we're stressed out, our body relies on B vitamins, vitamin C, and magnesium to deal with that stress, to manage the inflammation that is going on because of that stress. But all of those are really important for your normal functioning of your body, for healing and repair, for the immune system. And so it's a vicious cycle because your external stresses cause an internal stress in the body because it's trying to catch up. And this having a knock-on effect on your ability to deal with stress effectively, your ability to sleep, your ability to think straight, brain fog, your ability to digest and absorb nutrients properly, and then your ability to get rid of waste. And in turn, all of these place further demands on your nutrients. And it's a downward spiral and a continuation of that cycle where you just get into more and more poor nutrition status. So the nutrient deficiencies or insufficiencies that I tend to see in mums postnatally are things like iron, B12, magnesium, omega-3, zinc, vitamin D, iodine, which is really important for thyroid issues, and selenium. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you'll know that I've got a few podcast episodes about these nutrients in particular when it comes to energy and mood. And it's really common for this to come to a head about 9 months postpartum onwards, because this is when your baby starts becoming maybe a little bit more independent, maybe start having a bit more of a reliable routine, and suddenly you notice how rubbish you feel. And this is also often when your periods start again as well. So you notice that they might have changed, that you're more affected by them. Maybe you've got more mood swings, maybe your digestion is not so good, maybe your periods are longer, heavier, and more painful. And what happens is that your immune health is compromised, your hormonal balance is compromised, your mental health and your gut health. These are the most common areas that issues arrive in the first few years after having a baby. And often we start again, we have another baby, and we put more and more pressure on our bodies to be able to cope. So I guess what I'm saying here is don't ignore fatigue and exhaustion. These are signs from your body that something isn't right. That reduced capacity to cope and think straight, those hormonal changes postpartum, digestive issues, skin and hair concerns, signs that things need looking at. So what can nutrition do to help? So the really key thing that I tend to start my clients on is looking at their blood sugar balancing. So I get them to be what I call a sugar and carbohydrate detective. So whenever you eat any carbohydrate, whether that is pure sugar or whether it's rice, pasta, lentils even, they are broken down into your smallest components of sugar, known as glucose. These are absorbed into your bloodstream through the gut, and then you get this surge of glucose in the bloodstream. This tells your pancreas to produce insulin, and then that glucose is taken into your body cells as a source of energy, and any excessive glucose is stored in the liver and muscles for use later on. But when you consider a typical day's worth of meals, so things like where you have cereal or toast and jam for breakfast, you might have sandwich and crisps for lunch, you might have pasta with jarred sauce for dinner, you end up with a daily intake of quite high refined carbohydrates, not very much protein across the day, very low vegetable and fruit intake, low fiber, and a very low variety of food. Overall, giving a picture of low nutrient density. Refined carbohydrates are where the natural fibers or the natural breaking pad that is placed on food, carbohydrate heavy food, have been removed. So that's where you get an excess of glucose in one go. When this happens on a regular basis, for example, in the daily meal example that I gave above, your body goes on this constant drive to use sugar as fuel or to store it as glucose, because high blood sugar levels in your body is quite dangerous. This causes a very quick surge in energy, because it's being used really fast, followed by a sudden drop in energy. That glucose has been used up or stored as quickly as possible. But when we pair our food with things like protein and fiber, it keeps us full for longer and it slows down the release of that energy. So when you're low in fruit and veg, you're missing out on really important vitamins and minerals as well as that fiber. And we identified those vitamins and minerals as B12, the B vitamins, the iron, the magnesium, all of those things are really key for your recovery, for immune health, for brain health, for gut health, for hormone health. So the sorts of signs to look out for that you might have a blood sugar imbalance are things like where you get grumpiness around meal times, especially if it's delayed, mood swings and irritability, cravings at particular times of the day, especially for sugar. So what do you do about that? So I think there are 3 very easy ways that you can start to get more energy without spending time in the kitchen right now. You can start tomorrow. So number 1, reduce your dependence on sugar and caffeine to prop you up. So you can do this by keeping a food diary for a week. Include how you feel after each meal in terms of hunger levels, mood, and so on. Identify where your highest sugar and caffeine intake is and focus on that. So for example, in the mornings, say that's when you tend to have the most coffee and where you tend to have the most carbohydrate breakfast. Try delaying your coffee, especially if you often don't feel hungry for breakfast. Instead of having a coffee straight away, start your day with a cup of warm water with a pinch of salt, maybe a squeeze of lemon, because these will rehydrate you after a night's sleep and get your digestive system working. That prepares you for breakfast, and you might find yourself starting to feel hungry if you never used to. When you reduce sugar, do it slowly, because if you have become very reliant on these, you want to avoid getting headaches or sugar and caffeine hangovers. So if you have sugar in your coffee, cut it down by half a teaspoon each week, rather than trying to cut it out altogether. My second tip is to choose an abundance of colourful vegetables. Aim for at least 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, but ideally aim for 30 to 50 different plant food across a whole week. So you can do this by using a rainbow chart. This is something you could do with the kids. Smoothies and soups are a really easy, quick way to get a huge range of nutrients. And if you are signed up to the kind of 7-day accompanying emails to this, you will get a meal plan with lots of colourful food and ways to get your veggies in really easily and quickly. And then most important of all, prioritize protein at every meal and snack, especially breakfast. It doesn't have to be complicated. So when you have toast, you can have peanut butter on it. Have some hummus and crudités with your sandwich instead of crisps. Swap your white pasta for lentil pasta. Make it easy, make it achievable. Do what you can. So that's that on how your food and what you eat is affecting your motherhood, and why it's really important that you look at what you can do to increase your nutrient levels and manage your blood sugar levels. Tomorrow, I am going into how you can start embracing that identity change and loving your body. I hope to see you then.